Hey guys, and welcome to Quality Shot. I'm really excited to be joined by the Cricket Connoisseur. And as you can probably tell from my attire and also Aaron's attire,
Yep.
this is going to be the Pakistan versus South Africa, or South Africa versus Pakistan even, ODI Series review. Pakistan coming out on top 2-1. I did say I'd wear my Pakistan shirt if we won, and
You
we
did,
have.
yep. Yep.
we have. Aaron has stuck to his guns though. He's still sticking on the Proteas jersey in solidarity. But a very good series, I thought, overall. So what are your initial thoughts?
Well, yeah, Faizan, I think that's spot on. It was a very enthralling and encapsulating series, I think. It was very, very good. I must admit, I like the quality of cricket on display from both sides. And I think it lived up to the billing because heading into this series, everybody knows Pakistan and South Africa are two of the most exciting and unpredictable teams in world cricket. And I think they delivered. It's as simple as that. And I think the second ODI in particular really almost summed up that unpredictable nature with that incredible 193 courtesy of PAK Talking. So, of course, we'll probably talk about that in a bit more detail. But in terms of the series itself, Pakistan rightful winners. I felt like they played the more consistent cricket over the course of the three matches. But yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed it. I must admit, and to be fair to South Africa as well, considering all of the big names that they're missing in the third ODI, I thought they did a very, very good job. I thought they put up a very valiant and spirited fight.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think, as you said in that third ODI with some notable omissions, but some of the young guns definitely stepped up, and we'll go into that in a little bit more depth. But I guess in the first ODI, as you said, for anyone that has not been keeping up to date, it was a very, very tight affair. Pakistan came out on top, actually winning on the last ball of the match, needing one to win. Nearly giving me a heart attack because we needed, I think it was 60 off 60 balls in the last 10. So a runnable, which should have been, as all my subscribers were telling me when I was in the live stream, it should be routine. But what they didn't realize is that they're Indian fans and they're very strong at the moment. And for them, it's easy pickings. But for a Pakistan fan, where we are prone to collapses and making things very hard for ourselves, I just knew we would make it difficult. And that's exactly what happened. Last ball, and Fahim Ashraf luckily just piercing the infield, and we won that on the last delivery. Not as high scoring as the other two, but 273 is what South Africa got there. And then, the next two, as you said, were really, really good as well. Especially the second one, the 320 from Pakistan that they put on, and then South Africa. Sorry, the 341 even put on from South Africa, and then chasing 342. Pakistan nearly got it done with after Fuckers and one went pretty big, very big even, but it just wasn't to be. Ran out of batting partners, and on the South African front in the third ODI, I thought again it was almost a mirror image because in the second ODI, I think it was we needed 31 off the last over, and in the ODI that just happened, the final one, South Africa needed 30 off the final over, but they had, I think, a couple of tail enders in, and it was going to be very tough. But even then, 30 off the last over is no easy feat. 5 6s or whatever other equation you want to put in place. Where I want to start off with, then let's start off with Pakistan, just because I'm really happy. If we'd lost, I would have started off South Africa, but because we won, I mean, the top order for me, it seems like it's just solidified as a Pakistan fan. We've got Imam al-Haq, Fakhar Zaman, and Bob Razam. And I mean, Fakhar Zaman averages 48. I think Imam al-Haq averages something like 52, and Bob Razam 56 now. So I think they are certains. And I was saying that I think most teams, they may not have them in there because they've got other players. Like, for example, India have got Rohit Sharma and Shikhar Dhawan, but most teams would be happy to have them in their team. I think, anyway, personally. And some people, I think, allude to the fact that maybe it would be nice to have another hitter opening with Fakhar Zaman, right? Because we've got someone like Shahjil Khan who plays T20 cricket. He can be quite hit and miss as one that in the ODI or one day format domestically, but he's got that kind of little bit of X factor about him. But I said, as a Pakistani fan, you know that Pakistan are prone to middle order collapses. So you need that anchor in there, and Imam ul Haq is that. So I wanted to get your thoughts as more of a neutral or observer as well. Like, what's your view on the top three, and can you see them being long term for Pakistan now?
I can. I like the top three. In fact, I know he had a poor series by his very high standards. I like Pakistan's top four. I like having Rizwan in there at four as well. So for me, I don't think that's problematic at all. The issue for Pakistan in this series and series beforehand is that middle order. You mentioned there about being prone to collapses. And in this series, I just felt like, in particular, those first two ODIs were a fantastic opportunity for the likes of Danish Aziz, for example, and Asif Ali. And unfortunately, it just didn't pay off. So I don't think the top order is the problem at all. I love that top three. I really like the almost fire and ice nature of Fakhar Zaman and Imam Al Haq. You got Babar Azam, who's Babar Azam. I mean, a lot of people saying it should be the Fab Five. I'd probably agree with them, purely because Babar Azam is such a classy, imperious, and technically gifted batsman. And then Mohammad Rizwan is just pure class. So for me, I like that top four. Keep it the same. If Pakistan do need to almost alter that batting lineup, I feel like the middle order is the area that needs to be reinforced for the future.
I agree with you. I think especially on the top three, Mohammad Rizwan is an interesting one because I think in Test cricket and T20s he's solidified his position and knows where he wants to bat. So T20s at the top, and at first I was one of the first people to say, "Oh, how's he batting on the top? Like I don't think he should be. I know he's a good batsman, but I don't know if he's explosive enough." And he completely proved me wrong in that. And in Test matches, batting, I think he's been batting at 5 or 6, and that's been quite nice for him as well. I think my only concern with him batting at 4 is I feel like maybe it's potentially too high, and maybe there's a lot of pressure on him there because he's a very, as you said, he's a classy player. But I'm of the opinion that maybe if he batted at 5 or 6, and he's someone who's quite busy, can get it ticking along, there's less pressure on him as well because he'll be keeping. And I just feel like at the moment he hasn't quite found his feet in ODI cricket. If he started to then perform a lot at 5 or 6, then you might say maybe we can have him kind of go up one potentially. But I feel like at the moment it's a lot of pressure on his shoulders. Could be wrong. Maybe he'll come good at 4, but I wouldn't be surprised if someone else kind of slots in and we move everyone down one. Which then kind of brings me on to Horace Sahel, who I'm quite a big fan of and has been very good for us in the last 2 years. I think he averages over 50. He can get picked in this ODI series, and I feel like if you had him at 4 and then Mohammad Rizwan at 5, and then go down exactly as you would, that would definitely solidify the middle order. So I want to get your thoughts on it because for me, I think Horace Sahel is someone who has to be in there and has proven his worth in the last couple of years in the ODIs. Hasn't got picked. It looks like, well, they say he's injured. I think it's more an omission than an injury, if I'm being honest with you. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, in terms of Harris Sahel, I don't think you can really doubt the character of the man. He is a very, very reliable and sturdy option in the middle order. It's as simple as that, played in part of the World Cup in 2019. So obviously, if he's fit and available, he should definitely be in the squad. The only thing that I would say, though, with Pakistan is that you have all of these middle order options. It's difficult to just select one or two because Rizwan at 4 could work. We don't know yet. I mean, I don't think he's had enough time. I think he deserves a little bit more time to almost solidify his place. But in addition to that, of course, you've got Hyder Ali as well. I know we didn't see him in this series, but a young, exciting, hard-hitting talent. He could also come in at 4 and 5 potentially in the future. So it may be difficult for Harris Sahel, but as I said, as long as he's fit and he's available for selection, at the very least in the squad, because he's such a reliable, dependable character. If it's up to me, Faizan, definitely be in the squad, potentially starting, depending on the situation.
I agree. I agree. And you mentioned Danish Aziz and Asif Ali. I think Danish Aziz was a bit unlucky. I kind of actually wanted to see him in the third ODI because I thought, look, he's pretty new as well. To give him just 2 ODIs, you may as well play him for the third one even, sorry, and see how he does because I think his main issue was Nortje, and Nortje obviously wasn't in that third ODI. He got out to him in the first 2, and he was struggling with the pace and the bounce that Nortje was generating, and that was the main issue for him. So I would have liked to have seen him. Obviously, didn't get picked. And Asif Ali, I think I'm of the opinion that as a Pakistan fan, we've seen him quite a bit in and out of the side, and I think he does it. He does quite well domestically, and the domestic stuff. But he's one of those players that he's a good domestic player, but I think the step up is a bit too much for him to play international cricket. He's been very, very inconsistent. I mean, we're talking about a knock every maybe 7, 8 games at most. What are your thoughts on those 2 players?
It's an interesting one, isn't it? And I actually agree with your sentiment about Danish Aziz. I don't think we saw enough of him, and I think it is a bit unfair to almost drop him after 2 games. With that being said, though, I must admit Sarfraz in the last game did a very, very good job, and he also did keep wickets quite well. So maybe it's a decent one in terms of the tactical, and of course it did pay off. In terms of Asif Ali, again, I'd probably agree with that as well, because we know what Asif Ali is capable of. He's someone who can single-handedly finish off an innings with a quick fire 30, potentially 35, 40 runs. He's that kind of quality batsman. But the issue there is consistency. You're not going to get that every single game. And if the top order doesn't fire and you have a game where Asif Ali isn't on form, it's gonna generate collapse. So for me personally, as much as it is hard to say, I do like Asif Ali. Of course, when he's blasting sixes and smashing fours to the boundary, I think probably his time may be limited for the time being until he gets some more form, maybe in the future. I always say this, the door to international cricket is never shut. It's always ajar. But I think for the time being, with all this young talent in Pakistan, it might be quite difficult for the future.
Yeah, I agree. Especially with you seem to have quite a few all-rounders that can bat in that position. Shadab Khans, Ahmad Wasim, Muhammad Nawaz, etc. So they can also offer something with the ball, whereas he can't. So considering his recent performances as well, I think it's going to be quite difficult for him. I'd be surprised to see him going forward. I think he's had quite a few chances, but let's see. As you said, all it takes is one really, really good domestic season, and then he's back in. Okay, let's go on to, I guess, the biggest and best performers of the series for Pakistan. We'll start with the batsman first. I mean, Fakhar Zaman, I was just so happy to see him back in form because I say amongst all my friends, and a lot of people say to me, you really like him, don't you? And I just say, well, I'm wearing my Champions Trophy shirt, and I was there at the final for the Champions Trophy. And I remember seeing him hit that knock against India because I was there live, and I just thought to myself, this guy has something about him. And I know it's one knock, but even throughout the Champions Trophy, you could see what he was about. And when he's confident, he is a threat to any team. I think the issue with him is he clearly lacks a bit of confidence for the last year or so. I think he averaged something like 14 for a year. And they stuck with him, though. They stuck with him. And I even was thinking maybe they should just give him a rest, let him go back to domestic cricket and get his confidence back. He's got it back here with a bang with that 193 and then 101. Obviously, the first ODI didn't get many runs, but then after that, just hit the ground running, really. First of all, are you impressed with how he's done? And second of all, I think he's in the top 10 for fastest of 2,000 ODI runs. So he's clearly no mug when it comes to ODI cricket. And I feel like we discussed this before about Shikhar Dhawan. His sweet spot seems to be ODI cricket going at that rate. Do you think there's a similar thing with Fakhar Zaman, do you think?
Potentially, yeah. And I just want to touch upon that incredible 193, because that is one of the most extraordinary knocks I think I've seen in recent history. It's as simple as that. The second highest ODI score in a losing cause. Of course, the highest being Charles Coventry for Zimbabwe. He scored 194. But it was just a masterful innings. It really was, hitting those sixes, in particular the ones against Tabraiz Shamsi, to the onside. And they aren't just creeping over the boundary rope. They are going miles over it. He was sending it almost sending it into the streets of Johannesburg, let alone onto the banks of the Wanderers. So, for me personally, Fakhar Zaman, absolutely brilliant. Brilliant. Was it 302 runs I think he scored in this series, average of over 100? Okay, it's absolutely ludicrous. He was brilliant. And also, those two centuries, the 193 and the 101, were different, but they were different in really, really good ways. So the one in the third one was almost an anchor one. It came quite slowly. It was building in innings, laying the foundation for the likes of Babar Azam and Hassan Ali at the end. And then, of course, that second one was just, well, I've already said it, majestic. It was magical at times. I thought he actually would have pulled it off. Unfortunately, didn't, but gave us a lot of entertainment along the way. And then in terms of him, well, having that sweet spot, I'd agree. I think it's a nice place for Fakhar Zaman in ODI cricket because he has time to almost build an innings. He's someone who doesn't necessarily have to always hit the ground running. We saw that in the third ODI, but it gives him the opportunity to almost build a platform for himself and then explode and change gears as his innings progresses. So for me, I like Fakhar Zaman. I really do. I think since 2017 with that Champions Trophy performance, I think a lot of people have had him on the radar. Of course, a double century against Zimbabwe as well. So for me, Fakhar Zaman, great batsman. Just as you said, needs a bit of patience, needs a bit of support at times. But when he does come firing, my goodness, does he look good.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And it's interesting you said about the ODIs. And I think for him, it's maybe a case of he can take a bit more time to get going. And like, even that 193, like he was going pretty slowly at the start. His first 30, 40 runs were quite slow. And then he got his iron and accelerated. I think with him, because he hits the ball so hard and he does go quite hard at the ball when he does get going, if he tries to do that at the start, it's very hard to not get out because it's quite high risk at times. And you said about those sixes, I mean, they were crazy. I think against Shamsi, he hit him for 3 sixes in a row, the first 3 balls. And I was thinking, oh, am I getting 6 sixes here? And I was getting ahead of myself because he's batting so well. But he was batting on the tail and realized that he probably can't do that. But yeah, I mean, at one stage, I was watching it live and I was live streaming on the channel. And myself and Venu, who's on as well, we were watching it and he was going ballistic as well as just a neutral, saying, oh my God, he might do it, he might do it. And I think he went from 0.1% to 20% chance of Pakistan winning throughout that innings. So Pakistan literally nearly turned it on its head. And it would have been, I think it would have been, if he'd done it, I think it would have been one of the best chases I've ever seen, actually, from recent memory anyway. It was just, it was such a good inning, such a good knock. And the fact that he pretty much did it all by himself, didn't really have any help as well, and just had to just bat. I mean, it was, I think people get carried away maybe as well with his hitting and clean striking, but there was a lot of cricket brains and intelligence in that knock with, okay, when to, especially when he's batting with a tail, he knew when to, okay, last ball, need to get a single here, or on the fourth delivery, you know what, okay, now I need to take a single, let him have one delivery to face, block it out, and then I can go. And I think there was a lot of thinking behind it in the way that he batted, and I think he showed a different side maybe to his game that people didn't realize. And as you said, similarly with that 101, again, it was, I think it was just below a runner ball. I think it was 101 off 103 balls, something like that. And as you said, it was more of an anchor role because he felt like he had to play it. The pitch was a bit more sticky. It wasn't quite coming on like it was in the Wanderers, where it's more batsman friendly. And at Super Sport Park, it was in Centurion, it was just, you could tell it was sticking in. And that's why we saw so many caught and bowled as well, maybe. Yes, some loose batting from the Pakistan players, but also I think the pitch was stopping a little bit. But yeah, I mean, what was it? I think Herschel Gibbs had the previous record for the highest score at the Wanderers. So he's now broken that, I think, by good, I think he was 150 odd. So or was it? I think potentially. So he's broken it by 30, 40 runs, that record. So interesting to see if someone breaks it in the future. I'm sure they will. They'll probably be one of the Safas, I'm sure. Babar Azam, will very, very briefly touch upon him. Because as you said, I mean, just a really class player. He seems to have definitely found his feet already in ODIs and T20s. And I think it's now a matter of him, I guess, doing it in the test arena, some match-winning knocks against some of the bigger teams. But I'm assuming, considering this is one of the so-called Senna countries that a lot of the subcontinent fans like to say, South Africa, England, New Zealand, and Australia, it's quite a good sign, I think, for him to get runs here. Do you think it puts him in good stead now going forward for the rest of the year as well? It seems like he's maybe found a bit of form.
It's Babar Azam, Faizan. It's as simple as that. The guy's an absolute master. So even if he would have, I don't know, maybe not had as good a series as he did, he'd still find a way to score runs. It's Babar. It's as simple as that. He kills you with precision. He's not a hard hitter. He's not a destructive striker of the cricket ball, but he's someone who just tears oppositions apart clinically with strike rotation, beautifully carved away boundaries. He is so good to watch. I actually I can't find many words to describe Babar Azam anymore. I've genuinely run out of superlatives to describe his batting, because every single time you think that there's a good 50, 60% chance that he's going to provide a century or a big substantial knock. So for me, yes, this puts him in great stead. Fingers crossed as well in the summer he can get some runs for Somerset if he does come back. And yeah, I think he is set up very, very nicely this year to go on and score plenty more runs, not just in ODI cricket, but potentially in the T20 World Cup as well for Pakistan.
Yeah, I agree. I think he's going to be really crucial for us in the T20 World Cup. So if he doesn't get runs, I think it might be very difficult for us. But he is, I mean, he's our star player, so we have to look after him. And I think that 100 that he hit in the second ODI, was just unbelievable. It was such a good 100. I mean, it's one of the best 100s I've seen in terms of just made it look so effortless, and some of the striking of the cricket ball, especially against Nortje, was just so good. I mean, it was just great to see. And I was just thinking to myself, this is such a good knock. And actually, sorry, it was the first ODI, not second. And it's funny because he got all the plaudits because Pakistan won, but I think Van Dustin had hit 123, and you're thinking, why is he not getting the plaudits? It's just because Van Dustin's knock was really good as well. But I think it's just the way that Bob Brosnan got his 100. The commentators were just, even the South African commentators were just so amazed by how he got that 100. It was just incredible, masterful stroke play from, as you said, a class act. In terms of the bowlers, then for Pakistan, I mean, I've been one of the biggest critics of Haris Rauf for quite some time, saying that he's and Aaron, I think he definitely doesn't agree. I was of the opinion, I want to be honest with you, that so I remember him coming to play in England here last summer against England, and I just watched him. I just thought, okay, I know that he's done pretty well in the franchises and also in domestic cricket, but he just seemed a bit raw, seemed a bit erratic. I know he's got pace about him, but I just thought he doesn't have any control. He got slapped about quite a bit here. Then played against Zimbabwe, and I remember thinking, okay, he was kind of on and off. He's performed really well, to be fair, in this ODI series. So, and we've got the T20 series coming up as well. I mean, 7 wickets, the joint top wicket taker alongside Nortje, who only played 2 matches, but an average of 24 as well. And he just seems to have this knack of picking up wickets, especially later on in the innings, the middle part and phase. Is my criticism misplaced, do you think? Because I had to put my hands up a couple of times and say maybe he's international standard. I was of the opinion that maybe he's not international standard, but he seems to be proving me wrong so far. What do we think? Do you think he's going to be a regular fixture for Pakistan going forward?
I'm going to be honest, and I'm just going to throw it out there. I really like Haris Rauf. Wreck-It Ralph. Simple as that. I still remember him charging in for the Melbourne Stars in the Big Bash. This guy has just captured my attention ever since. I've loved watching him in the PSL for Lahore and for Pakistan as well. And I understand your point there, Faizan, in terms of his erratic nature. I do feel at times he goes searching for wickets, does stray on the line and length, but he's a fast bowler. It's going to happen from time to time. You can't expect him to come in and nail it absolutely every delivery. He's a human being. But with that being said, when Haris Rauf is on form, when he's on song, when he's charging in, belting it in 145, 150 kilometers an hour plus, he just keeps you on the verge of your seat. Whether you're playing against his team, whether you're just watching as a neutral, you know that every single time Haris Rauf comes into bowl, something could happen. And that as a neutral makes him such a fantastic bowler to watch. And in particular, in tandem with Shaheen Shah Afridi, it's blockbuster. It's as simple as that. And for Pakistan fans, you are so privileged right now to have 2 absolute gun bowlers. It's brilliant to watch. It really is. It's so thoroughly entertaining. The thing with Haris Rauf as well in this series that I have to give him a lot of credit for, we mentioned about his sometimes erratic nature. I felt like in the 3rd ODI in particular, his control was absolutely exceptional. And in particular, he set those standards right from the get-go. His first over was a maiden, and his seam position was immaculate. The speeds were up 145 plus. And in addition to that, he was just causing absolute problems throughout that entire South African batting lineup. So for me, Haris Rauf, give him time, be patient. Yes, sometimes he's going to go for a lot of runs. He's an express pacer, and you're going to go up against countries which like pace on the ball. But if Pakistan can be a bit more patient with him, actually invest in Haris Rauf, I think he's a gun. I really do, and I wish him many, many more successful years in the dark green shirt.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's. I have to almost, I think, put my hands up and say maybe I'm wrong. I think let's see how the rest of the year goes. But so far, I think he definitely warrants a longer stint in the team for sure. I think it's pretty difficult. It's funny because Pakistan just persisted with him, and I thought, why are you persisting with him? And clearly, this is why. And sometimes that's why we're very, very, very quick to, I guess, jump on selectors and say, why are you picking this person? You should have picked this person. But actually, it seems like it's coming good. So I'm happy for him anyway. He's got quite an interesting story as well. So fingers crossed he can continue to perform. And it seems like when he performs like this, Pakistan, it definitely helps Pakistan anyway. And as you said, Shaheen Afridi, he got 6 wickets, and he seems to be getting slightly better as well, I think, with time. He's still very, very young. Isn't it? Yeah, he does. He's got that natural, obviously, in-swing into the right-hander, and then he seems to have developed. Before, it used to be just going across the right-hander, which was just kind of natural variation leading with the arm. But now he seems to actually, and I was watching him in the 3rd ODI, and it seems like he's actually developed an outswing into the right-hander. And that's very interesting because that's not something that all left arm bowlers have to a right hander. Normally, it's a natural variation, and then it's the in swinger, which they have. But he's now seemed to develop that away swinger as well, which is very very useful. What are your thoughts on him? I guess in general as well, and going forward. I mean, he's going to be integral. I think again, like Babar Azam to the T20 World Cup for Pakistan. But I mean, he just seems to keep on improving.
Well, he is. And to describe Shaheen Shah Afridi in one word, he's a superstar. He really is. I remember watching him 2019 World Cup against New Zealand at Edgbaston, 3 for 28, I think he got. And he just tore through the Black Caps, who, as we all know, have a fantastic batting lineup. They really do. For me, Shaheen Shah Afridi, I agree. He is the spearhead of that Pakistan bowling attack. He is the X factor, a bit like South Africa with Rabada, a bit like England with Archer, and India with Jasprit Bumrah. So for me, Shaheen Shah Afridi, absolute gun. Simple as that. Haven't got a single bad word to say about him. And as you said, the real scary thing for me as a neutral, heading into the T20 World Cup, the 2023 World Cup as well, is that he seems to be getting better and better and better. He seems to be learning, maturing, and developing his game pretty much every single series. So for me, Pakistan they've got a star on their hands. It's as simple as that. Absolute superstar, one for the future. And as long as he can stay fit, who knows? He could go down as one of Pakistan's greatest ever seamers, in my opinion.
Wow, it's a big statement, but I
It
think
is.
he could. He could. I think, as you said, as long as he stays fit, I think injuries is a big thing. But I think he takes the bulk of the wickets most of the time, and he takes some vital wickets as well at times. I mean, removing the openers. I mean, he's always the one really to make that first breakthrough, and it's normally one of the big guns. So we are very lucky, I think, to have him. We just need to look after him, make sure we don't bowl him into the ground. And yeah, I think going forward, I can't wait to see more of him. And very briefly, I just want to touch on the spinners for Pakistan before we go on to South Africa. Shadab, obviously, he injured his toe, 151 kilometer per hour. I think Yorker it was from Nortje, broke his big toe. We won't be seeing him in the T20s, which is a bit of a shame because he's been very stop-start for the last year or so with injuries, etc. I think that's been a really big shame because it seems to have just stalled his form and progression. I think his batting has gone better, but his bowling, which again, going back to that Champions Trophy in 2017, which is now 4 years ago, I remember watching him in the final thinking, this guy is a really good bowler, and he was only 18 at the time. His bowling, I feel like, I don't think it's got worse, but I think it hasn't progressed either. And that's something that's a slight worry to me because I want him to be a genuine all-rounder, but I feel like he's got fixated on his batting. I think we need him really to have both, and he's got that ability. I wanted to get your thoughts on him and also on Usman Qadir and also Mohammad Nawaz as well. And what are your thoughts on all three spinners?
Well, I'll start with Shadab, and I do understand that in particular in longer format cricket. So in Test cricket and ODI cricket, I feel like again at times he does search for wickets. And when you look at Shadab's real potent weapon, his X factor almost in T20 cricket, the thing that has served him so well is the wrong un. The issue though in ODI cricket and Test cricket that I've seen with Shadab Khan, that seems to be his only go-to. He doesn't usually utilise the stock leg break or a slider. I know a flipper may be a bit difficult, but potentially could utilise that in the future as well. So for me with Shadab, I think he's a decent hold up and end bowler. He's someone who could potentially create a little bit of pressure, maybe take the odd wicket here and there, but I don't see him as a strike bowler. Okay, I don't see him as that anymore. I see him as a batsman who can bowl quite handily. As I said, can definitely generate some pressure, but isn't a strike bowler. But talking of strike spinners, and I'm so happy we mentioned his name, Usman Qadir. Again, someone who just keeps going from strength to strength to strength. I remember watching him in Australian cricket for Western Australia, and that was the first time that I ever saw him. And of course, for the Perth Scorch in the Big Bash, and see his progression as well. He had such a brilliant series against Zimbabwe, and then in this particular game, the third ODI, that ball to John Smuts was absolutely outrageous. It really was. It was a textbook flipper. And John, he's a decent player of spin, John Smuts. He plays in Port Elizabeth at St. George's Park, but he didn't have a clue. It made him look almost, well, as if he'd never played spin before, and that is an incredibly difficult thing to do against such an experienced player. So for me, Usman Qadir keeps going from strength to strength to strength. Again, could be a real potent weapon if Pakistan utilise him correctly, maybe in the T20 World Cup later this year. And then finally, Mohammad Nawaz. Again, I like this guy. It's as simple as that. He is someone who is so consistent. I feel like at times has flown under the radar in Pakistan domestic cricket, but he's always so consistent for Quetta in the PSL. And he comes onto the international stage in ODI cricket for this third ODI and takes 3 wickets. He was absolutely sensational. And again, we talk about control, consistency, something which Shadab at times has been lacking in his cricket, in limited overs cricket. Nawaz didn't have any issues with that at all. He was metronomic, generating pressure, not allowing batsmen to score easy boundaries. I thought he was absolutely exceptional, personally, and he kept things tight. So in terms of Pakistan spinners, I have to admit, you've got a very good crop. And of course, Imad Wasim didn't play in this series, but he's another one who can slot nicely in there as well. So, yeah, when it comes to the spin department, Pakistan, pretty strong, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's interesting that you said about Imad Wasim. I think I'm not sure exactly what's going on there, but obviously wasn't picked, and hopefully we'll see him back because I think he not just gives you good overs, and he bowls those darts which I think just rushes the batsman and cramps the batsman. He seems very well. He is very economical, and he gives vital runs down the order. Lefty as well, and seems to have that little bit of power needed in that lower middle order. Shadab is an interesting one because when he was growing up, you always thought he's a bowler, and you didn't really think he thought maybe he can bat a little bit. And now you, as you said, you might think actually he's a batsman who can bowl a little bit. And I'm kind of hoping that that bowling side he really does work on, because I feel like maybe he can't be a strike bowler, but maybe he will be someone who is seen as a genuine all-rounder, because I think at the moment he's flipped it. I think he needs to be someone who, for example, if we go to a country where we only need one spinner, then he can be our spinner. That makes sense, right? And then he gives you batting, because I think it just gives you better balance and options. I think at the moment he can't be. That's the issue. And I think we played him as an only spinner. I think in the first one we got away with it a little bit. But yeah, I think I agree with you 100%. I think he needs to improve on his bowling, and hopefully he does. And his batting, I think he needs to be more consistent if he wants to be seen as someone who can bat in that top 6 for sure. Mohammad Nawaz, as you said, is so consistent. I mean, he picked up those 3 wickets in the third ODI, just came in and did a fantastic job. And he picked up 3 vital wickets as well, because South Africa looked like they were going really well. And, to get Yanaman Milan, who we'll touch upon as well for South Africa, because I think he's a really good talent, a really big talent. And yeah, I mean, he got him, Bavuma, and what was it? And one other company have gone. But yeah, he got those 3, and it was just so vital, I think, at the time. And I was just thinking to myself, you know what? If we'd had him earlier on, maybe it could have helped. But then he also had, as you said, Osman Qadir, and he bowled really well as well.
Yeah.
Didn't get as many wickets, but he always looks a threat. And that flipper was fantastic to see. It really was. And as a leg spinner, I get so excited when I see other leg spinners bowl. And he just looks so good. He looks so good. And I just wish I could bowl a flipper like him, to be honest with you.
Don't we all?
Yeah, don't we all? Exactly. Don't we all? Let's go on to South Africa then, because there's quite a few talking points for South Africa as well. Obviously, they didn't win, but I think going into that third ODI, it was 1-1, and I think they were definitely underdogs going into third ODI with a weakened side. I guess, first of all, let's touch upon some of the big guns who got runs. I mean, Van der Dussen, that 124 was exceptional. And I said to you, I think I said to you or someone else, that there's some players that you see and you just think they can play all 3 formats. And I think we said this about Surya Kumar Yadav and Conway. I think Van der Dussen is another one that when I saw him first break on to the scene, I think it was in the T20s, I think. I remember seeing him and thinking, you know what, he can play all 3 formats. And then he's gone on now to play Test cricket, and he's done quite well there. And now he's finding his feet in ODI cricket. I mean, he is going to be surely a very vital cog in the South Africa lineup going forward.
Absolutely, 100%. And I remember I was there 2019, Old Trafford, Australia versus South Africa, and he produced one of the most incredible 95s. It really was. He almost got his 100, and he just holed out to square leg on the final ball of the innings. I was absolutely gutted for him, but he is such a fantastic batsman. Hang on. He is such a sorry, my voice went then. But he's such a fantastic batsman. He really is. He's so technically assured, so gifted, and so composed as well. And that's something in Rassie van der Dusen's game, which I think is so pivotal and integral to South Africa's success. Let's say Bavuma doesn't get runs. Let's say Markram or De Kock doesn't get runs. Rassie van der Dusen just shoulders that responsibility and almost says, I'm going to be the guy. I'm going to save us from that sticky situation. And in that particular innings, he did exactly that. It was masterful. And the way in which he finished it towards the end as well, alongside David Miller, it was ludicrous. It's as simple as that. Rassie van der Dusen is a brilliant, brilliant batsman. And I completely understand your point about being that three-dimensional player, potentially playing all three formats, because he's technically gifted. And another thing with him, throughout each of the formats, he's versatile enough to actually change his game depending on the situation. He's a dynamic batsman. He's a thinking batsman. He's not someone who just goes out there and hits it hard from ball one. So for me, Rassie van der Dusen, key cog. If South Africa are to challenge in the T20 World Cup or indeed the 2023 ODI World Cup, I think he's going to be an integral member of their success.
I agree 100%. As you said, a very good point you made, even about him being versatile. And I think he can definitely play more than one way. And I think that's what you need, right? To be able to play all three formats 100%. And it's interesting because whenever I see the scorecard or I watch him play in white ball cricket, he's always hit like 3 or 4 sixes at least in his knock if he's gone on to get more than 20, 30 odd. And obviously he plays test cricket though, and you see him playing test cricket and it's very, very different. He's very more kind of traditional and classical, and he seems to have that very, I guess, important aspect of test match cricket, which is a solid defense. And I think if you've got a solid defense, it's very easy to then be able to work off that and play in all three formats. I think some people don't have that hitting capability, which then makes it hard, but he definitely does. He's got very, very good timing. He's a very sweet timer with the ball, and he's just so good to watch. And I can't wait to see more of him, to be honest with you, because I've been very, very impressed by how he's batted so far. You mentioned Aidan Markram. I think we need to talk about him because, and no offense to James Vince, but I feel like he's a little bit of the James Vince in ODIs at the moment for South Africa. He seems to be looking very good for scores between 15 to 30. I know domestically he's been fantastic in South Africa. And also we know that he's found his feet in test matches. He's in very fine form. ODIs, though, he just seems to get stuck a little bit. And it's interesting because a commentator said maybe it's a case of he doesn't know exactly his role. And I think they also said it might be a case of him just needing one good knock to then get him over that hurdle and think, you know what, I can do it here and get that confidence up. I think that's probably the case, but there seems to be something there which stops him, because every time I've seen him really in the ODIs, I think pretty much all three, he looked really good whilst he was in, going at a pretty decent rate as well. Timing's out. I'm seeing some of the shots he's hitting. I'm thinking, wow, this is fantastic, right? And then he just gets himself out, or he gets out to a decent ball. But I'm just thinking, what's going on here? It's almost like he just has a mind blank. What are your thoughts on it? Because I don't want him to become a James Vince for England, where he looks very good for 2030 on the ODIs. And I think his average at the moment is like 28. I think he should be averaging at least 40s, I think, long term. What do you think?
It's an interesting one, isn't it, with Aidan Markram? It really is, because we all know the class of the guy. You mentioned there in South Africa's domestic scene. I'm a Titans fan. Well, technically was, because the Titans no longer exist technically anymore, head of the new structure. But he is just one of those imperious batsmen. He's someone who almost does shoulder the responsibility and almost single-handedly produces that platform for an innings to go ahead. I think in terms of his recent struggles, I think the mental aspect is a massive thing. And I compare it to Joe Root, because Joe Root, throughout the entirety of 2020, everyone, the word on their lips, when's he going to get that new century? That next century, I should say, not the new century. And it didn't come. But then one big innings in Sri Lanka, and suddenly the floodgates open. And I feel like Aidan Markram, that could be the exact same thing. The only issue that I do have, will they have the patience to actually allow that to come to, fruition? And I don't think South Africa will, because of Yaneman Malan, because of how impressive he's been. He's impressed in pretty much every single time. He's even appeared in a Proteas shirt. It's as simple as that. Go back to the Australia series, was brilliant. Go back into this third ODI, scores a brilliant 70. So Aidan Markram, I do worry about that. I really, really do. He didn't have a great World Cup. He hasn't had a great series here against Pakistan at all. And because of that competition, and even Reza Hendricks, haven't even mentioned him. He's another one who could potentially usurp him at the top of the order alongside Quinton Cock, as could Bavuma. Bavuma's opened in domestic cricket for the Lions. It's an interesting one. And I'm going to be honest, if Markram doesn't get that big knock soon, I feel like his time could be limited. And that is a really, really difficult thing to say about someone so classy.
Yeah, very true. Could be limited to Test cricket, I think, as you said. It's such a weird one, isn't it? Because he just looks class when he's in. And that's I guess the same thing we have James. But the reason why I think it's different is because he's done it on the test in the Test arena. So he's clearly capable of doing it. I know it's a different format, but he looks so good, and especially domestically, it's crazy. And that leads me quite nicely on to what you mentioned, Yanaman Milan. I mean, he just looked so good in that third ODI. I mean, he averaged 75 going into third ODI, and I was just thinking, I know, as you said, he hit that 100. I think he holds the record. It's a record of getting out duck first ball and then getting 100 in the second inning, which is hilarious. Got out to a toe crusher from Stark in his debut innings, and went on to get 100 by hitting Stark, Hazelwood, and Cummins all around the park, which must have been a very good feeling for him, for sure. And he just looks like someone who plays fearless cricket. His timing is exemplary. I think he's going to be turning 25 soon. So I think if they're going to give him the chance, it needs to be soon. I know he plays T20 cricket as well for South Africa, but and it's quite interesting you said about Markram, because I was of the thinking, like, where's he going to get in there though? Because I was thinking De Kock and Markram, I'm thinking Markram, they'll probably give him some more time. De Kock they're never going to drop. And then do you want to try and just slot him in maybe at 3 and move everyone down? But then I don't know, will he perform at 3? Because sometimes when you put someone in a position that's a little bit foreign to them, they don't perform as well. So what do you do there? And I was thinking, but you got to get him in there. You have to get him in there because he just looks so good. If you're the Proteas selector, what do you do with him? Where do you slot him in? Or do you slot him in there?
That's a great question. It is a very, very good question. And in terms of manipulating the batting order to fit him in at 3, I don't think that would work. Because you look at his record this year in the Momentum One Day Cup, so that is South Africa's domestic 50-over competition. He was the leading run scorer, and he opens the batting for the Cape Cobras. You mentioned that incredible knock against Australia, the 70 in this one. He is a specialist opener, and some of the shots that he produces, I think it was against Hassan Ali, there's one where he utilised the wrist so sumptuously, just to almost caress it through mid-wicket. It was a gorgeous shot. It really was, and he just oozes class. So for me, Milan does deserve a go. However, there's one major thing which is preventing South Africa from almost taking him in onwards. And I think the one thing which could almost, I don't know, create some doubt in their mind ahead of the T20 World Cup, and of course the ODI World Cup in a couple of years' time, is his ability to play spin. Now, he hasn't got much subcontinent experience, and in South Africa itself, he does struggle against leg spin. We saw at times against Usman Khadir, didn't look ridiculously comfortable. I know he didn't get out to him in the end, but he wasn't exactly playing his shots a bit like Markram was. So that's the one thing that I think is holding him back. If Yanaman Milan can really work on his spin playing abilities, if he can almost manipulate the strike, if he can pick the gaps a lot better, maybe utilise the sweep a bit more in his game as well, that's when I think that he'll really be banging the door down for South Africa. But until that happens, I feel like the Proteas selectors will probably stay with Markram just for another series. I feel like they'll give him one more chance. Aiden, go out there. We know what you're capable of. Go and score big runs. And if that doesn't happen, Yanaman Milan is almost the successor, the next in line to the throne of the South African opening pairing. So that's my opinion on Yanaman Milan. But even if it doesn't happen straight away, watch out for this guy because he is a very, very special talent, as is Carver Rayner. Both very, very good young batsmen.
Yeah, it's crazy to say though, isn't it, that someone who averages over 75 in 5 ODIs, you're just going to be like, oh, you're not going to make our team though. It's like, what? It's like he just scored 100 against Australia and 70 odd against Pakistan and another 50 as well against Australia. So you're just thinking, this guy's performed every time he's come out to play. Like, how can you not put him in the team? And to be honest, if he was a Pakistan player, I'd be saying, like, you got to get him in there. Surely, like, it's just incredible. Like, and he'll probably be thinking to himself, what else do I need to do? And I know you're saying about the spin playing, and I completely understand that. And I think you can tell, as you said, that he was a little bit uncomfortable, even against Mohamed Nawaz as well, which is how he got out eventually. But I just think if you're going to be uncomfortable against spin, but still get 70 odd, then there's probably something right there. And again, like, it's difficult because they can cite that, but he'll just say, well, Mark can play spin a lot better than me, but he scored whatever it was, 20 odd, and I got 70. So I think he'll definitely look at that. But as you said, I think it's quite important to note that the T20 World Cup is going to be in India, and the next ODI World Cup is going to be in India. So that's something that clearly he'll need to work on. I want to see him in there, but I also want to see Markram in there. So it's just very difficult for me as just a neutral looking at South Africa's side, saying, well, how do you do it? And as you said, at 3, you don't think it'd work. So
you can't fit them both in. And that is one of the most cutthroat decisions that South Africa have to make. They can't, because you look at that middle order, but Vuma, nailed on. He's the captain.
Yeah.
Simple as that. He's at 3. Van der Dusen at 4. Klaassen, to be honest, hasn't really done much wrong, so he's probably going to stay at 5. And then number 6, David Miller. So where on earth does Markram go in? And that is going to be almost the litmus test for South Africa. Will they be able to make that difficult decision? And who knows?
Crazy, absolutely crazy. Yeah, we'll watch that space, I guess, for Yann Milan, because he just looks
great,
incredible. It looks so good. Let's go on to Renner then, because he just was so good in that third ODI, wasn't he? I mean, this young player comes out, 23 years old. I'm thinking, to be honest, I've never seen him bat before. I'm going to be completely honest. I hadn't seen him before, and I was watching him thinking, and it's funny. I said this in my review straight after. When you see a batsman come out with his collar up, you normally know he's probably going to be. You might be in business to see some runs, because what was it? Kohli comes out with that. You used to have Ricky Ponting, Michael Clark, to name a few. Not all of them come out with their collars up and score runs, but majority, let's say, they know what they're about. And at 23 years old, he didn't look phased at all. I mean, he was going above a run a ball for most of the innings as well, and it just looked easy for him. I know he's been informed domestically, but to come out on the international stage like he did, I know he's played some ODIs previously, but this knock was special. I thought it was very, very good. Clearly, and the partnership he formed with Felequeo nearly got them over the line as well in that third ODI, which would have been incredible. But I mean, him especially. I mean, Varane especially. Even just, I don't know. He's one for the future. I'm assuming he won't get into the team similar to Yann Milan straight away. I think might take him a bit more time because I guess he's more the mold where he came in at 5, right? So I guess the person most in danger is Klaassen, but as you said, he's got a couple of runs in the bank from previous series to hold upon. But he didn't have a very good series, so I think if he doesn't have another good series, then I think they may look to him. What are your thoughts on him?
I can't say a bad word against him. I really can't. I like Kyle. Great bloke as well. Spoken to him on multiple occasions. And his biggest strength, and this is interesting, isn't his batting necessarily. It's not his keeping. It's his mental fortitude. This is a guy who doesn't necessarily score runs when South Africa are doing well. But when they are in a bit of trouble, that is when he comes into his element. He has saved countless games for the Cape Cobras in domestic cricket. You mentioned there he's had a little bit of a taste of international cricket. He scored a 50 against Australia in the ODI Series victory in Potchefstroom. I think that was the third ODI in 2020. So this guy knows how to score runs when his team needs them the most. And that is something which I think sets apart Carl Verreynne, not just from the rest of South African domestic cricket, but South African cricket in general. He is someone who, if the Proteas need him, a fallback option, someone to rely on and depend upon to get some vital runs, he will deliver. And it is something that is so rare in international cricket that I think almost he is on the verge, he is on the cusp of international selection on a regular basis. He really is. We mentioned about Klaassen. I do think he is maybe the man in danger. I don't see Verreynne as a 6. I like David Miller almost as the finisher role alongside the all-rounders. But at number 5, Carl Verreynne in the future could be an absolute asset. He really could. He rotates the strike well. He has a good boundary percentage. He's also a very good keeper. And I know obviously we didn't get to see that in this series, but he is one of the most technically astute and assured keepers in the South African domestic arena. So for me, Carl Verreynne, I mentioned it with Yann Milan. Remember the name. Simple as that. He's an absolute star. Really is.
We've got Ian Bishop in the house here with our. No, 100%. Yeah, he looks really, really good, does Carl Verreynne. I think he's definitely one for the future and maybe even one for the present. We'll see. But he is definitely a talent. What was it, 62 or 53 for him as well? 3 4s, 3 6s in that lone innings in that third ODI, which I thought was just so good. And alongside Felipe, obviously they performed a fantastic partnership. But at 5, he looks the real deal. He really does. On the bowling aspect, then, I guess the biggest thing is Nortje, who seems to have really come into his own now. It seems like, look, he's had some test matches, some ODIs, some T20s. He's still relatively inexperienced in all 3 formats, really. I know he's done very well in franchise cricket, which is why he then came onto the scene for South Africa, did very well domestically as well. But he just seems to have this X factor about him, which we know Rabada is the big gun, you could say, for South Africa, has been as well, and is really in all 3 formats. But Nortje now is almost lighten the load a little bit on Rabada, I feel. Because before I felt that Rabada, there was a lot of expectation on, okay, you're the one that's going to get us a wicket. Now it's actually, you can get us a wicket, we know. And Nortje, you can as well, especially in the middle overs with that extra pace, he's express. And he's someone who, he's not just express, he hits the deck hard. And that means that he gets extra bounce. And then even more so in South Africa, where it's bouncy tracks, he gets even more bounce on those bouncy tracks, right? And it reminds me of, I guess, if you want to take an English example, your Harmisons or Flintoffs, where they used to hit the deck really hard. He's very similar, I think, to that. And he seems to have developed, an instinct as well. And he gets that little bit of nibble off the seam. He seems to be constantly improving. And he actually was a top wicket taker despite only playing 2 matches, 7 wickets, average of 16. I mean, he's going to be vital, surely, for South Africa going forward. And I mean, how good is he and how good do you think he's going to become?
Well, very good. It's as simple as that. We saw him, execute his skills to absolute perfection in the IPL, produce that dynamic duo alongside his fellow countryman, Kagiso Rabada. And the thing with Nortje, as you said, he is absolutely terrifying to face as a batsman. It's as simple as that. He can execute a toe-crushing Yorker. We saw that against Shadab Khan. But then at the same time, he can just execute that little bit of an extra bounce. And that bit of extra zip and bounce must make him an absolutely terrifying prospect to face as an opposing batsman. And in this series, again, I spoke about Harris Ralph's control. I thought Nortje's has been absolutely outstanding. It's as simple as that, because anyone can have that sheer pace, but they don't necessarily have the control. They don't necessarily have the accuracy, the consistency. And yet Nortje just seems to have the perfect storm of all of those attributes. So for me, alongside Rabada, those two are an absolute handful. It's as simple as that. But the key there, and something which has almost emerged as a result of that dynamic duo forming, has been South Africa's tendency to almost allow the third seam option to get absolutely hammered. And that is something which is a little bit dangerous heading into the future. Because in this series, for example, you look at the third ODI in particular, and of course none of Nortje Rabada were playing, neither was Lungi Ngidi. But those extra seam options, Pethalakwayo went for absolutely tons of runs. De Pavillon and Hendricks didn't really produce any wicket-taking deliveries either. And as I mentioned with Ngidi beforehand, in those first 2 ODIs, he was being targeted. So for me, that's something which South Africa do need to look at. Maybe that is almost a negative feedback cycle, which has occurred as a result of that dynamic duo actually forming. But in terms of those two, if they can get some early wickets, if they can almost enforce an innings, put an opposing batting lineup on the back foot early, it does set the Proteas up quite nicely heading into not just 50-over cricket, but T20 cricket as well in the future.
I agree, and I guess maybe in ODIs, it's interesting because they open up with Ngidi and Rabada, and I guess that gives you a little bit more balance because then Nortje comes in the middle overs, and you're not getting it all at once with Nortje and Rabada opening up, and then maybe you're exposed, I guess, in that middle order or middle phase even, of the innings. But yeah, it's interesting. I think I agree with you. They are a little bit too expensive, the other seamers, so they need to figure out how to combat that, because it's probably a case of, as you said, the batsmen respecting Nortje and Rabada and thinking, well, we're going to have to target the others. When they do, for the most part, it comes off, because nowadays, if people want to go after a bowler, they can do so pretty easily with the boundaries, bats, and innovation nowadays. On the spin front, it's quite an interesting one because Shamsi, I think, rightly so, got his chance. Got targeted a bit, as we said, from Fokker Zaman, especially in the second ODI. Got completely destroyed, really, by Fokker Zaman in the second ODI. What are we thinking? I mean, Maharaj came in and did a really good job in the third ODI. Did a very good job. Got 3 wickets. Shamsi has done very well in T20s. I think we know that he's most likely going to be the man in T20s. But in ODI cricket, who do you think South Africa are going to stick with going forward now? Because I think they've got two different bowlers, a left arm wrist spin and a left arm slow bowler in Maharaj. I mean, who would you pick? I guess is more the question, because I feel like they're kind of side at the moment.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, to say the least. If it was up to me, I would go Keshav Maharaj in ODI cricket. And the reason why is because South Africa already have a pretty pronounced tail. It's as simple as that. They've got batting up to around 8, but then they do have quite a lengthy tail in comparison to a team like India or England or Australia, for example. Even Pakistan. I'd say that they have a pretty similar tail length in terms of Pakistan as well. But I think Maharaj really does give a lot of balance to that Proteas, not just batting lineup, but the bowling as well. His control is absolutely exceptional. It's as simple as that. He's a wicket taker. He can build up pressure from one end. And if you think of him in tandem alongside Onric Nortje, that must be an absolute handful. Because you've got sheer pace at one end, and then at the other end, you've got Maharaj who's turning it both ways if you're a right-hander and isn't allowing you to get these easy boundaries or allowing you to manipulate and rotate the strike. So I'd go Keshav Maharaj, and that is nothing against Abray Shamsi, because we know what he's capable of. He is something a bit different. Of course, we have seen left arm wrist spin in the past with Kuldeep Yadav, in particular for India. But I just feel like Shamsi, if he is really going to nail down his spot, he needs to work on his batting. Because at the moment, he does not have that department, that string in the bow per se, to really compete with Keshav Maharaj. So for the time being, I'd go Keshav. I think he did a really good job in the third ODI. Had a fantastic one-day cup for the Dolphins as well in domestic cricket. But that being said, if Shamsi can just work on his batting and potentially fielding as well, Maharaj is an absolute gun fielder. I think that goes under the radar sometimes. I think for the time being, Maharaj will be the option in ODI cricket for the Proteas.
Yeah, I think I agree. I think he gives more balance, I think, for sure. And it's interesting you said about the tail, because I think, yeah, look, he's not going to be your top six batsman, but I think down at whatever it is, 8, he gives you pretty good flexibility to say, well, actually, we back him to maybe get 20 odd. And I think Pakistan definitely saw that with Hassan Ali when he came in for third ODI. Obviously, I think he was unavailable for the first two, but look, he can hit a long ball. That's all I know. So, and he's got domestic 100 in 4-day cricket as well. So he's no slouch or anything on the bat. Yeah, he's not going to be, again, like Maharaj in the top 6, but at 8 or 9, wherever he may bat, I think that's not a bad place to be. And I think Australia's a really good example with Stark and Cummins. They've got 2 of those really in there. I guess with South Africa, potentially they have Maharaj and Rabada. Rabada can bat a little bit. I know people say that he's a lot better than his stats suggest. So maybe he will start to come a bit better with the bat as well, lower down, and get some vital runs. But interesting, I think, on the spin department, I agree. I think Maharaj is probably the more solid option for South Africa for sure. Before we go on to, because I want to ask you about the player of the series and batsman and bowler in a moment. But before we go on to that, I wanted to ask you about Bavuma's captaincy, because he's now newly appointed. He's actually going to be out of the T20 series because of that hamstring injury, which is a big shame, because it would be nice to see how he does in the T20s, not just captaining, but with a bat as well. But what do you think about his overall display as a captain and leading from the front?
For his first series, I'm going to be honest, I think he did a good job. It's as simple as that. I think he did a good job. But at times there were just these little, inconsistencies. And I think the third ODI showed his inexperience as a captain. And I think in particular those last 4 overs, because I mentioned beforehand about De Pavillon and Hendricks not necessarily taking wickets, but they were both pretty economical. And at the death, I don't think you can afford to bowl John Smuts. John Smuts is a good middle overs bowler, but you can't afford to bowl him against a set Babar Azam and Hassan Ali who's just going out there and swinging absolutely everything. So I think that was something in his captaincy that does need to be worked on, and something as well, which I spoke about with Cricket Fanatics magazine, a South African publication, was almost a lack of clarity in the game plan. So when South Africa's game plan A didn't work with the seamers, they did adapt. They went with the spin bowlers, but in terms of the seam bowling, they didn't have another plan. So they're just going short, 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 short. The pitch wasn't really offering as much in comparison to the first ODI, and they didn't change. And yes, you can say that's on the seamers, it's on the bowling coach, Charles Longavelt, as well. But I also think the best captains, the Owen Morgans, the MS Dhonis, the Kane Williamsons, are dynamic. They're enterprising. They're innovative with their captaincy, and they will actively change game plans as an innings progresses. So that's something I don't think that Bavuma showed in this particular series. But again, it's his first 3 games. Give the man time. He's got until the 2023 World Cup. That is what South Africa have given him in terms of a time frame. So it's not absolutely, what I say, lethal or calamitous at this point for South Africa. It's something which you'll learn as he gets into his stride as an international captain. But I think that is something which he could learn upon and improve upon heading into the future. With that being said, though, in the first 2 ODIs, considering he was a brand new captain, and in particular the first ODI as the example, I thought his bowling rotations were pretty good. I really do think he brought the bowlers on at the correct times. I just feel like, as I said, that inexperience did show as the series went on. But overall, if I was to give him a grade, probably a B. I think he did a decent job overall, to be honest, in his first stint as Proteas captain.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's a lot of pressure on him as well with a weakened side in that third ODI as well. It's pretty hard for him to. I mean, he looked to Markram to bowl 10 overs, which was very interesting to say the least.
It
Pakistan
worked, though,
definitely.
to be fair.
It did work. It did work. He
Yeah.
opened up the bowling as well to 2 lefties, but I think Pakistan didn't cash in really there because I know Markram is a decent, accurate bowler, but he reminds me of Joe Root in ODI cricket, which again might give you a couple of overs, but should be bowling 10 overs for whatever it was, 43, which is ridiculous, I think. But Pakistan got over the line, so I won't complain. But yeah, that was interesting, but it worked, as you said. So a little bit of innovation there, but maybe a little bit of naivety. Bowling, I think it was 9 out of the 10 last overs were spin. So Felaquea bowled the last one, and the 9 before that were all split spin. And as you said, John Smarts got hit for 27, I think it was, in that over. Hassan Ali hit him for 3 or 4 sixes, which was just ridiculous. So he got taken to the cleaners, I think, unfortunately. So a little bit of egg on Boomer's face, but really, I think he'll look at it, and the South will look at it and say it's a learning curve, as you said.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think a B is a pretty solid grade for him. To wrap up then on the ODI series, what do we think then in terms of batsman of the series? Who would you give it to?
I think it's pretty obvious. PAK Zaman, simple as that. For the 193, pretty much alone. I mean, it was absolutely outstanding. I thought he had an excellent series, back-to-back ODI centuries. For the first time in his career, average of well over 100. Yeah, PAK Zaman for me, without a shadow of a doubt.
Yeah, no, agreed. I think it's pretty hard to go away from him for sure. What about bowler of the series?
Again, I have gone a bit obvious. I've gone on Rick Nortje purely
Okay.
because he took 7 wickets in 2 games. And he looked absolutely unstoppable as well. 4
He
for and a
did.
3 for. He was an absolute handful for Pakistan throughout those entire 2 games. So, yeah, Anas gets it for me. He was absolutely exceptional.
He was. He looks an absolute menace for sure. So not looking forward to seeing him bowl against Pakistan in the future, that's for sure. And moment of the series.
Now, that's an interesting one. Because you could go for the controversial one. I'm not going to touch upon it too much, but obviously the PAK Zaman run out was massively controversial. But in
Yeah.
terms of a positive moment of the series, I've already mentioned that Yanaman Malone shot, which was absolutely preposterous. David Miller as well in the second one, unleashing some absolutely gargantuan sixes. But for me, I'm going to go Fakar again. And for one of his sixes against Tabraiz Shamsi, where he just knelt down and absolutely dispatched him, pretty much over the bank at the Wanderers. So that is my one. It went miles. Okay, it almost had snow on it. It was ridiculous. It went up into the high heavens. That's how high that ball went. So for me, yeah, PAK Zaman and that absolute dispatch job against Tabraiz Shamsi in the second ODI, that'd be my moment of the series. Absolutely devastating stuff.
Yeah, that's a very good pick. I think as a Pakistan fan, I'll probably go for the first ODI, where Fahim Ashraf, we needed one off the last ball. And
Oh,
I was
yeah,
just
of
thinking
course.
to myself, oh my gosh, what's going on? And luckily we got over the line, which is good to see, but it was almost had a heart attack in the process while watching that. But classic Pakistan, so I can't complain. Is there anything you want to touch on before we wrap up?
I think we've pretty much covered everything there, haven't we?
Yeah.
Covered all 3 games, covered all the standout performers. No, I'm pretty happy with that, Faizan. I think we've done a thorough job there, to say the least.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Aaron, for coming on as well. It's a pleasure as always. I can say it this time because it is the second time you're coming on.
Yeah.
So it's been fantastic to have you on. And no, I really appreciate it. Great to have some good analysis and good cricket chat as always. Guys, please do check out his podcast, The County Cricketer, isn't it?
The County Cricket Podcast. Yep, brand new episode up today, funnily enough. Preview
Yeah.
of the County Championship season. So yeah, give it a listen. And of course, subscribe to Faizan as well. Subscribe to Quality Shot and like the video as well. I'll just put that in there. Cheeky.
Thank you for the plug. You know what? I always forget to do it. So yes, please do remember to like the video and subscribe to the channel. It really, really does help. And I appreciate everyone's support, which has been pretty good so far. And the live streams were good fun as well. So maybe we'll get you on for one of the T20s if you're up for it as well. It'll be good fun. Well, thank you very much, guys. And see you on the next video. Thank you very much.